DeadHatz. Dose.
Hello everybody, DeadHatz here. This is a retake because I actually recorded the first one without audio. Basically, we're going to do similar to what I did last video, except with the Plasma Sentinel. So, many of you know I originally wanted to nerf shields, and then after doing research and playing around with it more, I ended up siding on the side that shields should stay the way that they are. Now we're going to do the same thing with Plasma Sentinels, because you guys know I bashed out Plasma Sentinels many times in the past. I think it's quite busted. I have seen some comments tell me their point of view and why they don't think Plasma Sentinels are that broken. And I'm just going to talk about why I don't think many of their counterpoints fit very well. And then of course, if you want to comment to this video with some new points, please do, because I do read the comments and you will possibly change my mind. It's happened before. But anyways, my main issue with the Plasma Sentinel is I feel it is a power creep to the boltshot. For those of you who don't know, that gaming term power creep is basically when the developers make just a stronger version of something that is also just as cheap or even cheaper than the other version that it's more powerful than. The boltshot is better than the Plasma Sentinel in certain situations. Its projectile is faster and it is a much longer range and is probably better down a long hallway. However, that is about the extent of where its usefulness ends, and even then it's still not the strongest. Basically, bolt shots, they activate and they shoot a wall of spikes or a long line of spikes if you put a mod on it, and the Plasma Sentinel is a block that shoots one singular ball, but it tracks to you, and the bolt shot can only shoot once before deactivating by default, whereas a Plasma Sentinel keeps shooting at you until it's destroyed. And although the Plasma Sentinel's projectiles are slower, my main reasoning here for why I think it's not really fair when compared to the bolt shot can mainly be brought up by this large room I built. So I covered an entire wall in basically Plasma Sentinels, and then I did the same test where I spread it out throughout the room. And I want you to try and look for something that is constant. And now I did the same exact test where bolt shots. I put bolt shots in random spots in the room, and then I did another test where I just covered an entire wall with it. Now, ignoring my garbage gameplay from the side, I want you to kind of notice that the Plasma Sentinels had me moving the entire time. There was no point in which I could stand still at all. And the bolt shots, well, once they're all used up, I could just kind of sit there and I didn't really have to move around as much. I was in definitely like a less urgent state. And I feel like that is the biggest thing that makes Plasma Sentinels bigger than bolt shots, is the fact that they almost have to be destroyed in order for the threat to disappear. With a bolt shot, once it shoots at you and misses, you don't have to worry about it ever again unless he has the mod that lets it shoot a second time. But then after the second time, it's done. Plasma Sentinels have 360 view, so it doesn't matter if you're above, below, side to side, it will shoot at you constantly, whereas the bolt shot can only shoot one direction, and so if you perch for the side, they're pretty easy to disarm. And I think another thing I've seen is people are like, oh, well, the bolt shot has longer range, but it's only one more range by one block. In a hallway, sure, you're probably still going to use a bolt shot, as you should. It is better in that situation. But I do feel like the Plasma Sentinel has pretty much an advantage everywhere other than a tight hallway. And even then, in a small room, I'd still argue Plasma Sentinels are better, as shown here. I'm sure you guys have seen a setup like this before. It's a small little kill box room. And I want you to show you, I wanted you to see the difference between this room with Plasma Sentinels and this room with bolt shots. as you can see, with a room like this where every inch is covered in death, usually you want to approach it in a methodical and slow way. You want to be able to inch in, destroy a little bit at a time, because that's the only way to really play around this, especially with the death pistons there. It's going to be very difficult to skip the room. And so if you notice with the plasma sentinels, and especially if I had the add-on that gives them a cloud of death smoke wherever they land, this room would take much longer, and the longer you spend in this room, the more chance you have of death. And the fact that it's forcing me into more dangerous areas, I have to continuously move, meaning I'm continuously activating more traps that could possibly kill me. Whereas with the bolt shot, once they were deactivated, there's almost no threat in the room. I'm pretty much able to disarm the room almost perfectly. Now, I still died a couple times, but that's just me being bad. I think any average player would still die a lot more times to the plasma sentinel than they would the bolt shot, especially if it had the will-o-wisp add-on. Or not will-o-wisp, the death cloud smoke. And I know what some people are going to say is, well, plasma sentinels are only issue if you have the death smoke add-on on it. And, you know, bolt shots, you know, they can have add-ons too. Why aren't you comparing that? I don't think there's a single add-on on the bolt shot, one of the bolt shot unique add-ons, by the way, might I mention you, that even remotely equal the will-o-wisp add-on on the plasma sentinel, and they could even cost the same. For example, if I throw Hunter or Relentless on a bolt shot, I think it's definitely less of a threat than the cloud because it can literally block off certain areas. It could cover your safety point. So in a room like that, I want to go in and out, destroying traps at a time. And if a cloud hits the entrance, then I'm stuck in that room pretty much. Because especially if two clouds stock on each other, I'm going to be able to maybe grapple out of it if I'm lucky. And if I'm in there for even like a 0.1 second too long, I'm instantly dead. Whereas a bolt shot, even with let's say Hunter, which, by the way, plasma sentinels come with Hunter by default, it's still not much of a threat because you can deflect and not worry about the trap anymore. Whereas, like I said earlier, plasma sentinels can continuously fire after you one after another. And then I had this one commenter who was really defending the plasma sentinels, who gave two kind of pieces of defense for the plasma sentinel. He said, well, the plasma sentinels, they let out a big loud noise and they turn red before they shoot at you, and the projectile is very slow moving. I'll give him the projectile slow moving, but turn red and make a loud noise. Almost every trap in the game does that, even bolt shots. So I don't really see that as a relatively good defense for the trap. And then another note is, by default, bolt shots destroy other traps. So it makes you think about placing a trap directly in front of the bolt shot, as it has a chance of being destroyed by the bolt shot. Whereas the plasma sentinel, you have no fear. That thing will not destroy other traps, as shown here. And to make matters even crazier, the incinerator can kill its own creeps, the corrosive cubes can kill their own creeps, anything that's kind of fire or DOT can affect their own creeps, but not the death smoke of the plasma sentinel. Now don't get me wrong, creeps or minions, whatever, can still die to the projectile, but if they're stuck in the cloud, then too bad, so sad. They're not going to die to it. And then on another note, if you pop a bubble dome shield and a projectile just barely misses and hits next to it, and its AoE if the death smoke gets inside your shield, now half your shield is blocked off, and because you can't crouch in this game, it's a possibility your head could be sticking out of a corner, which could be sniped. So that's just another reason that I think the Plasma Sentinel could be a little crazy. And then I want you all to keep in mind that this thing is the same price as the bolt shot. Now, I did see someone say, well, maybe just lower the cost of bolt shot, which I think could help this situation. However, it still allows mass Plasma Sentinel spam, and that is when they're most dangerous. I think either we need to raise the price of the Plasma Sentinel to greatly reflect how much value it actually brings, or at least make it able to kill its own traps and the AoE able to kill creeps, because I think that's a bit more fair and balanced, seeing as almost every other trap in the game does that, except for the incinerator, which makes sense. Fire's not going to melt that metal, especially if it's only on it for a couple seconds, whereas that thing is shooting like this ball of plasma or acid, whatever, and I think that thing should be able to destroy its own traps. So either make it more like other traps that have these drawbacks, because right now there's almost no drawback to it except being able to shoot one less further than the bolt shot and the projectile being a little slow. Otherwise, it's just a power creep of the bolt shot in almost any situation. And I think what a lot of people also don't take into account is the fact that it synergizes with other traps a lot better than the bolt shot. Now, don't get me wrong, the bolt shot, you can create some pretty interesting combos with it, but I think a lot of players are going through the thought process of, well, I can combo this into that, and they're just like, well, if I put a plasma sentinel here, then they're pretty much always in danger. And then also the other defense I saw from the same commenter is that he said plasma sentinels, he'll put them in a really good spot, and that if they're nerfed, it could possibly ruin this spot he's put them in. I don't really think that's a good defense for it, because almost any trap in the game is going to do well if it's in a pretty good spot and a well-placed spot. Even an impaler can get you if you really don't see it coming, because the builder hid it in a clever way. So I think, oh, but if I put it in a good spot, it's people who throw it around randomly that are the issue. But the only problem is the people throwing around randomly are the majority. And so I think it'll just be a little fair if maybe they cost a little more, so people have to be a little more selective with how they use it. Because the plasma sentinel spam will beat bolt shot spam any day, and I just don't think it's fair that they cost the same. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the matter. If you disagree, leave a comment. I will read it, and I might even have my mind changed. It's happened before. Subscribe.
Subscribe to DeadHatz or you'll die tomorrow.